Hello everyone and welcome on back to the channel. The final 3 elite specializations have been revealed with the Evoker, the Amalgam, and the Conduit. Let's begin with the very first one that they talk about, which is the Elementalist, the Evoker, and I was going to say Conduit, which Conduit wouldn't have been a terrible name for this actually, but it is the Evoker. And this has such an interesting tie to Norn lore. This is where the spirits of the wild are pleading the Norn to open themselves up and teach them the ways of this magic, which I think is a really cool way to spin it and to give it some ties, because with this batch of elite specs, we're seeing so many various cultures come together, and I love that the Norn is getting a little bit of a spotlight in this, and it seems like a great addition to Elementalist, because I'm very much excited for the Evoker in terms of their summons, which we will talk about right now. So the section on the blog post that we'll speak on is Familiar Friends. Every Evoker starts with a choice. Which element do you want to specialize in? Selecting an elemental skill on the F5 slot will specialize in that element, granting a few bonuses. First, the attunement skill for that element will have a significantly reduced recharge time. In addition, some of the Evoker's traits and utility skills will be affected by your chosen element. And most importantly, a familiar of that element will join you on your adventures. Fire specialists will be accompanied by the cunning fox, water joined by the mischievous otter, air by the agile hare, while earth gets the stalwart toad. Toad enjoyers in chat. Put a toad in chat if you like the toad. The familiar has 2 different skills that are available in the F5 slot once they're fully charged, a basic skill and an empowered skill. The basic skill is charged as the Evoker uses their own weapon skills, requiring a total of 6 to fully charge. Weapon skills that match that familiar's element will count for double, meaning that only 3 fire attunement skills will be required to fully charge the fox's skill. The familiar's empowered skill will unlock after using its basic attack 3 times, and that's when the Evoker and their familiar unleash their full potential. The Evoker is a flexible specialization capable of filling a number of roles depending on which element you specialize in. Those leaning towards fire may choose to focus on condition damage, as the fox will complement those builds well. I am so pleased with the execution of this, at least in terms of writing. Of course, we have to see how it ultimately plays when we get our hands on this, but as it stands for the moment, I like that there is this build-up mechanic with the pet. I think if they had just given it a basic command skill, like with the ranger, it might have fallen a bit flat, but they have gone a little bit above and beyond. Now, I imagine that these familiars will also just auto-attack while in combat. I think it'd be strange if they just sit there and have to wait for you to use their normal skills. I do hope that there is some baseline of combat approach to these. But with that being said, I like that you have to charge it up, and that once you get that basic skill, there's another layer to it. There's the empowered skill, which is hinted at in the next section. So we're going to talk about fiery foxes. The fox's basic skill is called Ignite. When activated, the fox will launch a fiery missile at your target, dealing some damage and inflicting burning. An enemy struck by this skill, in quick succession, will receive additional stacks of burning. After using Ignite 3 times, and hopefully inflicting a good chunk of burning, Evokers will gain access to the fox's empowered skill, Conflagration. Using the skill will summon the fox near your target, after which it will perform a leaping strike that inflicts burning and also spreads any burning from that target to nearby enemies, up to a limit. Tune in to find out more this Friday. So they gave us a very small taste of the Evoker. Once again, there are 3 others, water, air, and earth, the otter, the hare, and the toad. So they all probably have their own roles that you can kind of specialize in. I imagine water is going to be more healing focused, maybe applying alacrity, being able to have a different way of supporting your team without necessarily having to take Tempest. Air, I wonder if that's going to be more power focused. It seems like fire is going to be fairly condition damage focused. And then earth, I imagine, is going to be more about disruption and self-sustain, maybe giving barrier and stability to yourself, maybe to allies as well. But we'll have to find out more. One thing I find interesting about the Evoker in the blog post is that they don't seem to talk about the utility skills at all. They mention that the utility skills do have some connection to the pet that you're taking and the one that you're specializing in. So that, you know, at least gives us something to think about, that they're going to include the utility skills in a lot of the mechanics with the Evoker. Next, let's talk about the Amalgam. Now, once again, engineers. I'm not an engineer player per se. I'm not really attracted to engineer, but their specializations continue to knock it out of the park, and it'd be very interesting. But then we have the Amalgam, oozing with power. Asuran scientists have studied, manipulated, transformed, and occasionally displaced oozes at every level of scientific research. Endlessly adaptable, oozes can absorb the properties of substances and living creatures they come into contact with, and a recent breakthrough has allowed them to be used as a powerful tool for both defense and offense. The mercurial mold is a special species of ooze that can form a symbiotic bond with its owner and interpret their needs in battle. It's lightweight, responds instantly, and requires no special feeding. And best of all, no fatalities have been reported as a result of the bonding process. Why not give it a try? We have the category Slime Time, where they go into the ooze stuff. Bonded with their mercurial mold, amalgams are engineers with unparalleled adaptive capabilities. By being able to freely customize which morph skills they select, you can arrive to any fight with the right tools to survive and dish out damage. Amalgams can temporarily meld with their slime, resulting in an altered or even mutated form. An amalgam's experimentation results in a malleable fighter that can always find the edge in combat. Amalgams replace the engineer's utility toolbelt abilities with morph abilities. There are several morph skills, and you can select which ones to fight with in the same manner you select your utility skills. The morph skills command the mercurial mold to shapeshift into different forms, such as a shield, defensive spikes, or even a massive sword. I love that they are giving you the freedom. They're not just tying it to your utility skills, but these are going to be, in a way, another set of utility skills that you can freely customize to your role's needs and also your encounter's needs. So there's going to be a great amount of flexibility for the engineer's toolbelt skills as opposed to other elite specializations that they've had in the past. And it continues with Become One with the Mold. Your elite toolbelt skill is replaced by Evolve. Evolve briefly combines the engineer and mercurial mold into one being, granting a host of benefits. These benefits, however, are unique to each slime. As you select your morph skills, your mercurial mold's composition is altered to also change what happens when you evolve. These compositional shifts, called strains, can vary from granting super speed and quickness to stunning nearby enemies when you evolve. Amalgam's utility skills are stances. The mercurial mold can assist you to shift your form, making you as dense as steel or as light as a feather. With the skill Liquid State, you can even melt down into a puddle. I'm guessing that was kind of shown off in the trailer with the visuals of plunging into the puddle. And yeah, I think this is really cool. Already, it sounds very straightforward and easy to pick up, which I think is very enticing. Engineer has a lot of complexity to it, and their elite specializations tend to have a lower level of entry, I think. It's somewhat easy to just pick it up and be like, this is what it does. This is how you go about doing it. But I imagine there is going to be some level of complexity when you can start considering how the mold turns into strains and how you might want to kind of weave that into your combat. So there are a few elements that I want to see executed in gameplay format, so that'll just have to wait till Friday. But the trailer was really good for the Amalgam, and it looks really hard-hitting. It looks really satisfying. The only thing is I hope that they have a nice access to ranged attacks, because I think Engineer at the moment doesn't have a wide variety of long-ranged abilities. But next, let's talk about the Revenant. We have the Conduit, and this one blindsided me kind of, but in a great way. I'm very excited to play the Conduit, because we get to channel Raza. So it reads, channeling the past. Centuries ago, the hero who defeated the fallen god Abaddon met a strange entity imprisoned deep within the realm of torment. Raza, a being born of the mists. Freed by Abaddon's death to seek their own purpose in life, Raza chose to accompany the hero across Tyria, and their boundless curiosity led them to study and master any number of martial and magical disciplines. But Raza's story seemed to have ended with their companions. No one has seen or heard from them since. They may have returned to the mists to wander, or fall into the corruption they once feared. They might have learned to mimic human behavior precisely enough to live 100 lives in obscurity. Or they could have been watching our world, still learning, and waiting for someone like you. Harness the mists with Raza. After the complexity of having two different legends in the form of Saint Victor and Archimedes in Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons, we wanted to focus on a single legend that offered an equally unique experience. As a denizen born of the mists, Raza is the first living legend to assist the Revenant in their adventures. With the Conduit, we wanted to portray the multifaceted nature of Raza's unique link to the mists. Thus, the elite specialization was designed to have a malleability and flexibility that reflects Raza's ability to transform into any profession. By amplifying the Revenant's connection to the mists, the Conduit can tap into a deeper well of power through the legends they choose to channel, further augmenting their existing strengths. Legendary Affinity. As the Conduit, you gain the ability to use Cosmic Wisdom, allowing you to further channel the powers of your equipped legend, giving rise to different forms. As an example, using Cosmic Wisdom with the legendary Assassin stance gives access to the form of the Assassin, granting the Conduit bonus power and movement speed, as well as inflicting debilitating conditions on foes you strike. Cosmic Wisdom only lasts for a limited amount of time, but it can be extended through the use of Affinity. Affinity is a new resource that represents the strength of your connection to your legend. Affinity can be gained through using any legend skills that costs energy. Each point of affinity you gain increases the duration of Cosmic Wisdom by a set amount. However, you lose all your affinity as you swap legends. Thanks to your power of Raza, Conduits gain access to the legendary Entity stance, bringing with them various skills that harken back to when they wandered Tyria as a hero. Each skill in Legendary Entity stance has an effect called Resonance, a bonus effect that comes into play if the corresponding legend is equipped in the other slot. For example, Beguiling Haze normally shadow steps you to your target while performing a quick attack on them. However, when Legendary Assassin stance is equipped as your second legend, the skill becomes an area of effect targeted skill, allowing Conduits to shadow step even without a target, and strikes all enemies in the vicinity. And that is your wrap up of the Conduit. The art for this is incredible. The moments of gameplay in the trailer were maybe a little perplexing because they showed a lot of the core Revenant. And I know that this spec has a lot of ties to it, but a lot of it was like them channeling those Revenant legends. But we were able to see some elements of what I imagine is the Raza stance, where we get to channel Raza and fight. And it seems like Raza's abilities might pull from the existing classes of Guild Wars 1 with like the Assassin, the Monk, the Mesmer, the Warrior, and also the Dervish. They mentioned the Dervish, which is really exciting. And I think out of all of the classes, Revenant does make sense for the Dervishes because you're like channeling the powers of the gods. And I think that'll be really cool. It's not a full-blown Dervish per se, but it's at least a step in the right direction to maybe getting a Dervish lead specialization in the future. These are really, really visually enticing, in my opinion. So I'm excited for all three. There isn't one that I'm kind of nervous about, actually. I think these are a good three to end on, and I believe that they're going to show some amazing stuff this Friday, and I'm so excited to learn more about the Evoker, to know how it can slot into different roles depending on which attunement it specializes into, and just how complex and how interesting the pet system might be, the spirit system. So yeah, thank you all for coming on by. Like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below about your favorite elite specializations that you have seen so far in this patch. Out of these three, are you for the Evoker, are you for the Amalgam, or the Conduit? And how excited are you to just be a goopy engineer? I know I am. And if you'd like to follow me over on Twitch, I stream on the weekends, and I will see you all in the next video. If you'd like to pre-purchase Visions of Eternity, I have links below in the description. I'll see you guys later. Bye!